Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Accuracy in America, brought to you by Accuracy in Academia. I am your host, Don Irvine, joined by my co-host, Brian McNichol.
Good morning and hello, despicables, deplorables, drags, champs, Neanderthals, semi-fascists, maggots, weirdos, and of course those dog-faced pony soldiers.
That's right.
And pet lovers. We're now pet lovers.
Something.
Trying to save the dogs and cats of Springfield.
Yeah. So, okay, let's just say on Springfield, I mean, this whole thing kind of drives me a little crazy, but I just saw a story in some online Jewish publication where the reporter was reporting, doing a story on Springfield and potential human trafficking being a problem. So, while the whole pet thing can be a little bit crazy, and I don't really, I wish that Trump wouldn't talk about the pets necessarily being eaten. I think the the larger thing about the immigration problem in this country and in Springfield gets kind of lost in the shuffle from all the pet eating thing. But this, I mean, if this story is true, this is yet another problem. I mean, human trafficking is nothing new. It does occur, unfortunately, but if we've seen Springfield's, I mean, it's got like what 50,000, 60,000 residents. I think they're like 15,000 Haitians on top of that, or something like that. It's a small town, and to see it happen there, it's kind of what middle America. That would be unnerving. I mean, to see there. I mean, I tend to think of human trafficking happening in larger cities, with bigger network operations and things like this. But if this story really, has she's got all the evidence for this. I mean, I didn't read the whole story yet. That is another problem that needs to be addressed.
Well, I mean, I think eating people's pets needs to be addressed. I mean, they've got like 60 people who've made the complaint. The city manager has said that it's happening. The police have, they've got police records of answering calls, and they got a guy had 20 cats in his truck. What are you going to do with them? I'm going to kill them and eat them. That's what they told him, and they let the guy go. And part of the point of this is when you do this, when you visit this other culture on this middle America town, right, then you get the police in a situation of, what do I do when I see a guy with 20 cats in his truck? Because that doesn't come up in Springfield as I knew it, right? But it's come up now. What do I do? And it's like, he says this, and, they don't know that he's going to do it, and they don't know that the cats aren't his, right? Because no one's complained that that cat is missing yet. And so they let the guy go, and the 20 cats got eaten. They're gone. They're not coming back. I think that, like, the idea, there are two things. One is they're not taking the very serious complaints of the people seriously. The other one is what you pointed out, which is, what are the Democrats doing about this? They're laughing at it. Ha, ha, ha. They really do that. Oh, you think they're eating pets over there? Ha, ha, ha. Right? And that's their attitude. It's like, you guys got nothing. Any complaint you have is because you're a racist and you hate the Haitians. Right? They're not taking this seriously. They're guffawing at these people, at their very real, meaningful suffering. Right? And I don't think that's, I mean, Trump was going to win Ohio anyway, but I think people all over the country in towns like Springfield that have been turned on their ear by mass uncontrolled immigration, like Aurora, Colorado, for instance, Eagle Pass, Texas, Santa Fe, New Mexico, Albuquerque, that have been, they're completely different places because of uncontrolled immigration. They're looking at that and saying, wow, they're laughing at us too. And they are. They're laughing at you. They don't think it's a problem. That's why they keep doing it.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry. I'm not buying this pets thing, because to me that's a little bit far out. And there's also, there's been enough pushback from other officials on this. There's a truth out there somewhere. I mean, if we, my wife is from Korea. The whole, and eating dogs was not uncommon in certain parts of Korea. part and things like that. Now, Korea's completely outlawed that. It's bad for their reputation and everything like that. And, how you enforce it's a whole nother matter. Can it happen in rural areas and other things like this? I think anything like this can
I mean,
happen.
the Haitians are famous for eating cats. They have a reputation for eating cats, and they're nearly all poor.
Yeah. So
you're saying it's a crazy accusation that they're eating cats in Springfield? I don't think so. And I think you've had enough people complain about this. And if you look who's trying to tell you it's not true, it is elected officials who would be held responsible by the voters for it. Like, downplay, the mayor of Springfield is literally saying, quit talking about this story, right? Don't tell everybody how I allowed this to get screwed up like this. Don't quit bringing attention to it. It's like, well, that's your problem. You should have thought about that when you were doing it.
All right. I want a reasonable person on our side to go into Springfield and figure this out.
Yeah. And I mean, people are doing it. That's part of the thing is like, okay, it's really right down the American political divide, right? Mainstream media is like, oh, we called the mayor and he said no. And the governor, he said no, but he sent a bunch of troopers to straighten it out. You know what I'm saying? And so like officialdom knock it down. So we don't care, right? We're not going to actually do it. And then the media, the people who've gotten off their butts and gone to Springfield and asked people, have found numerous people willing to tell them about this. So, I mean, there's the videos all over the internet. There's, multiple dozens of people who have said to reporters on camera, right, that their cats were stolen, or they know of people whose cats were stolen, that cats were being stolen, cats and dogs were being stolen and eaten. Right. Yeah. That it's like officialdom versus, online, media, non-traditional media. So, I think that's part of the story is like, officialdom is trying to push the story in one direction. And the people of the town, and of course the Republicans who have some electoral interest in it, are pushing it the other way. And I agree that it's unclear what all is true, what all is not true. But there's a lot of people saying this is happening to be able to just say, well, the mayor said otherwise, so the heck with it.
Yeah, I just want to say I have a healthy dose of skepticism. The problem in this world, okay, I don't care right, left, whatever. It's just that once somebody drops the rumor or whatever, it can pick up, like a huge head of steam. And then everybody wants their 15 seconds of fame, and they'll get on camera. They'll create their own videos and do all these. It's really, really difficult in a lot of cases to kind of figure out what the heck is going on. Who in the heck was paying attention to Springfield, Ohio before this? I mean, right. Springfield, Ohio now is on the map. Okay.
Right. Really until it was important to protect Kamala Harris. And then all of a sudden they got real interested.
Yeah. Well, and it's great fodder for Harris, right? She can use that, to make a lot of fun of things and everything like that. Now, I just saw a clip of an interview that J.D. Vance did with Kristen Welker, I guess it was, on immigration, and I'll say Vance was pretty good at this. I mean, the clip I saw, because she was talking about how immigration is now, at a low, and he pushed back on that by saying, well, he says at the border, border crossings, he says, but they've finagled the numbers by flying people into ports of entry, and which has been apparently backed up by the CPB, that's what's happening, is that there's just a shift of where the people are coming in. It's not that there are fewer people coming in. They're managing to move people around. So it's like, the border crossings are down. But let's not pay attention to this over here, and everything like that. And good for him, because Kristen Welker was kind of like, she was caught off. She didn't know what to do at that point.
Right, and that's it. Supposedly these people were flown into the country by the Biden administration and paroled. They were given legal status to stay in the country.
All right, this is what we're talking about. The bottom line, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, this is exactly what we're talking about. You can believe the pet eating thing or not. The focus really is on that's a small town where there's a
He's been
huge number of,
overwhelmed,
yeah,
and people are laughing at him.
yeah. I mean, if you've got that population, and then all of a sudden your population is increased by like 30% because of immigrants, you've got a problem. I mean,
Yeah, you
they're
do.
not ready to handle that. I mean, the big cities. I mean, how many times we've heard Mayor Adams in New York talking about we can't handle this, right? All these
Exactly.
mayors, all these people who didn't care about the immigration crisis before. Once Greg Abbott, and started sending people their way, saying, by the way, here's an example of what we're dealing with down here in Texas. Have a taste of this, and completely overwhelm the system. They're like, oh, we got to figure this out. We got a problem here, and all of
Right.
this. And so now the liberal mayors, get concerned about immigration, because now they're going to say, oh, this is what it's like to try to handle this massive surge of immigrants and not knowing what to do with them.
Right. And you have, 15-year-old kids in third grade classes. Your third grade daughter sitting there next to a 15-year-old boy from Haiti. How do you feel about that? I don't know. That's a safety issue to me.
Yeah. Yeah, it's unfortunate, and that's something that I mean, Harris certainly doesn't have an answer to that. Now, before we had gotten to that, I did want to mention the weather. When I was watching the reports out of what was happening in North Carolina, I'm like, yeesh, it's like, I'm glad, we need the rain here, which we're getting. I mean, I particularly need the rain because we did some reseeding of our lawn, and my wife is really sick and tired of watering the lawn. So, August was fairly wet, and then September it had been really dry.
Yeah.
It was cool, but it was dry. So this rain is like, oh, this is good. But I'm glad, we're not getting the proportion that North Carolina did, because that was,
Yeah.
you see these cities just getting overwhelmed, because people don't understand. And I don't know how many times, we can talk about it too, is that, water is dangerous. These rainstorms are dangerous. And flash flooding, it's called a flash flood because it happens in a flash. You don't think that anything is very dangerous, and the next thing you know, your car is starting to be submerged. Pay attention, people out there, to what is going on. There are dangerous conditions. When officials tell you to get out and flee to safety, do it. But I don't know, Americans. I don't know what it is about Americans. We're stubborn people. I think in my youth I was like that. I'm like, this rain isn't too bad or whatever. And I'd get to a street and I'm just like, oh, okay, well, that's a little harder to drive through than I thought it was going to be.
I guess we should say to our Louisiana friends, your weather is drunk and passed out in our front yard. If you could come get it, we really. We're getting is the remnants of the hurricane here,
right,
that passed through there a few days ago, and it's raining here, but it's not much wind and so forth. It's just rainy days. But what came across shore in North Carolina looked like a hurricane, right? If you looked at that was a big mass of storm with some wind damage within it too.
Yeah. See this one thing. Every time I see these storms, whether or not it's down south in Houston, New Orleans, wherever, I'm like, okay, that's a reason that I can't get to anything that's somewhat coastal, because there's the danger of that happening. I don't want to be in Tornado Alley because of that. And don't California, not just the politics, but between the earthquakes and the wildfires, I wouldn't want to live there either. I mean, I don't mind visiting these places. There's some beautiful places in America, but long-term living with conditions that, may force me out of my home, or if I'm not in the right place or whatever, stuff like that. It's like, I like general safety. I'm a coward at heart. Maryland is actually relatively safe. I mean, we've been hit a few times with some things, but not to the extent, I mean, North Carolina, I mean, how many friends do I have that have moved to North and South Carolina? And then I see these weather reports. Sometimes I'm like, I hope you're safe, because there's, some of those areas have gotten hit pretty bad over the years.
That's right.
So anyway, all right. Well, I want to move on to Israel and Hezbollah, because this was me. My wife was like, she was like almost giddy about this whole pager thing yesterday. And I wasn't even, I was focused on something else until really this morning. And then and as you need a little time once everything kind of settles down a little bit to kind of see what's going on there. But this was an amazing strike. I mean, all signs point to Israel, and it's been a little unclear to me whether or not Israel's really taken credit for doing this. But I think at least our intelligence services have said, this definitely looks like Israel did this. And as far as I can tell, they got themselves into the manufacturing process of these pagers that went out to Hezbollah operatives, and and then they were able to set them off, all at once or mostly at once, knocking off a lot of people. There's unfortunately, there's going to be collateral damage in some of that, and Hezbollah's obviously, the angry. I mean, Hezbollah's fired like 8,000 rockets in the last year at Israel. Okay, it's like, what do you have to be pissed off at? You've been bombarding Israel.
You don't care about collateral damage.
Yeah, you've been bombarding.
You're trying for collateral damage. So yeah. I'm nonplussed. Call me nonplussed on that.
Yeah. And then
this is one of the great military pranks of attacks of all time, right? Apparently they got where they were able to sneak this into an update. And so when they updated the pagers, with the new electronics or new, stuff or whatever, this was included. This worm or whatever was included. New kind of warfare. Not only did it cripple Hezbollah's fighting force, it also identified a lot of collaborators. I guess the Iranian ambassador was with one of them, right? So we know who the players are, right? They can't very well deny they're directing the efforts if they're, they were with the guys who got splashed. So, it's a very good thing, and you debilitated a lot of them. And like you say, they're not going to stop attacking. So, if they don't, until Hezbollah and Hamas are eliminated, Israel has a problem. Israel is at war, and they shouldn't stop because the enemy is not going to stop.
Well, this faux outrage is like, how dare you attack? How dare you knock off our people with this ingenious attack? Who are you to do that? I mean, it's like, you're knocking off some of our key people. You exposed the Iranian ambassador to Lebanon, as a collaborator, and all of this. And it's like, it is this outrage that is ridiculous. But boy, I mean, that was just this is, and to the point too that Hezbollah thought, okay, we realized after these other attacks before that cell phones are too easily traceable. You can be pinpointed. There's enough electronic data. You can pinpoint a cell phone. Pagers are extremely old school. I mean, I remember wearing a pager a long time ago. Not that I could figure out. I did this, and I'm like, I don't know. I thought the pager was kind of dumb in the end, and I gave it up. When cell phones really started to become much more useful, then I finally got a cell phone. But because when you had a pager, you still had to go find you had to go find a phone or something like that. Usually,
right.
The number would pop up, and I'm like, okay, now what?
Right.
So
that's right.
So pagers are
very old world, now.
And it's low tech.
How different would like Prince George's County be if this was available 20 years ago, right? You could have blown up all the pagers, you'd have never had Rayful Edmond, he wouldn't have been able to make any money.
Right. I mean, if they had so it is, it's a very low tech operation. So Hezbollah thought, we're secure. So now if you're Hezbollah, you're like, well, if they can do that, what's the next thing we're going to do? I was reading an article in the journal today that Sinwar, his, in order to stay safe, because he hasn't been seen in public, is that he really gets things done by passing notes to people, and it goes through a series of people, just handwritten notes go through levels and levels of people, so that there's no technology that shows where he is or where he has been. It's just that it's just these runners and whatever couriers that pass all these things on. I mean, if Hezbollah has to take a step back and do that, they'll be severely crippled, if they cannot have some other kind of communication. I mean, this world moves fast, and using paper and pen and paper is a very slow, drawn out process, and lots of other issues.
Plus, you have the element of somebody in their circle is helping Israel.
Yeah.
Right. It doesn't happen without that. So
Yeah.
who is it? And, there's a lot of doubt inside the circle.
Yeah. That's the other thing. They're going to be looking at like, okay, how did we get infiltrated, and who are the infiltrators, there? And so that's also going to hamper them while they try to ferret out, the operatives that are inside their own operation. I mean, this is not atypical of warfare, right? I mean, this is what you do. You need to try to get inside, and so that you can report back and do things and help your side win and gain the advantage. And so, it is. I have always been impressed with Israeli intelligence overall. The IDF, all the things, they've been able to. Yeah,
way better than us. Way better.
Yeah, they're just. I think they're some of the most superior security and military forces in the world overall, and they teach people a lot of things. And they're no one's perfect, but their operations can teach the others in the world how to do things and not be a bunch of pansies. Okay. They take strong action, and they're willing to say, there's going to be some collateral damage if we do this, but we gain the tactical advantage, and we may be able to win the battle or win the war if we do that. We can go rescue the hostages. We may, maybe the enemy happens to, they get wind of it, and they'll kill a few in advance. But if we move quickly and fast enough, we can get more out than we lose, or something like that. Rather than having them be out there and then maybe just get killed on, get executed later or something.
Now they're scrupulous as you can possibly be in the environment they're operating in to avoid civilian casualties, to avoid bystanders, right? And they're better at that than we are too. But I mean, they use them as human shields. Hezbollah gets a vote, and Hamas gets a vote in that too, and they vote the opposite way. They want civilians killed. That's a trophy for them.
Yeah, I don't know how good MI5 or MI6 is, but I have this, if I happen to be watching a television show or a movie that's got anything with Mossad in it, I'm like, it perks up my interest, even if it's just a television or movie, right? Because I'm like, oh, this ought to be good. I mean, this to watch them, to watch at least how they're portrayed, on television. And, most of the time, at least now that we have Netflix and, all these international shows that flood the market, as far as I can tell, it seems to be a relatively good depiction of how they operate, more or less, So, so anyway, all right. Now we also have had another assassination attempt on President Trump, this time while he was golfing. Secret Service, got a hold of this guy. They spotted him and everything, but he'd been on the golf course for at least 12 hours. They detected.
Right.
It was,
which means they didn't sweep it before he went, or they would have found the guy.
Yeah.
Right. A pretty basic step in that they didn't take, consciously did not take.
Yeah. So this is another, the Secret Service is already, they're already, suffering, having issues after the whole Butler, Pennsylvania issue, where Trump was, winged in his ear and everything like this. And for this to happen, this is 2 in 2 months. He didn't get a shot off at Trump or anything like that, but he was definitely in position to try to take, as Trump moved up the course to get a good beat on him. But yeah, the Secret Service is really in turmoil with all of this. They're kind of foundering with how to cover this. The golf course is a big, kind of thing. But they I think, if Trump is out there, you got to lock it down. You've got to go through.
You got to go through there and sweep it.
Yep.
Right. And go through every inch of that golf course, everywhere that there's, within range of a rifle or whatever, and make sure no one's there. You got to start with an empty set. If this guy was there 12 hours, this happened at like 1 PM. That means he was there since 1 AM. So a guy sneaks in there in the dark, and you show up in daytime, and you know that Trump is going to golf there that day, and you don't go in those woods and check it out. There's so much neglect here that it's hard to put it all down to neglect. It's getting to the point where it's like You guys are not trying. One of the things that's happening with the Secret Service is for Trump's detail, they are assigning people from other agencies, some of whom have little or no training in doing this kind of work. And so, they're patching it together with whoever's locally available and this kind of thing. And that's not how you protect people, especially when they're a target and you have, the other party calling him Hitler and dictator on day one and all this stuff every day. Then, people are going to hear that kind of rhetoric and they're going to want to go stop Hitler, stop the dictator, right? Save the country from this terrible guy, right? And, this is what happens. They can't control it. They can't control their crazies.
Yeah, and if it wasn't for, was it a bystander that spotted this guy driving off, and
that's right.
Turn that information into the Secret Service police, and they were able to
turn it into local police. So that another element of this is that like DeSantis is making a big deal out of, he wants Florida to investigate it. It's a state crime. The weapons charges that would be involved are on the state books, but not the federal. It would have to be, if he was going to be charged with attempted murder or anything like that, that would have to come under state law, not federal law. And so he's saying, make us the prime investigative agency on this. And of course, the feds are like, get out of here. Do not look at a single thing before you leave. Right. So I think you're going to have, the feds are going to have to explain why, especially after the botched job they did in Butler and the botched job they did here, why they should be the only ones who get to look at what they're doing.
Yeah. And this guy, I mean, he actually had a social media profile of sorts. And he actually had gone off to Ukraine. I guess he wanted to join the army there or whatever, but was rejected, was on psychological issues or something or other. And gee, big surprise now. But he was
74 arrests. He was on the FBI's radar as somebody who wanted to kill Trump. I mean, all these things. And you're not even looking for this guy. You're not even sweeping the golf course. I mean, I'm not saying that they are trying to get someone to kill Trump, but what they are trying to do is leave it so where it's possible if somebody wants to go to the trouble.
And is he not a convicted felon? So he's not even supposed
to.
Yeah,
multiple time convicted felon, not supposed to have a gun, right? I guess the federal, they have not charged him with that yet. So, the other thing is they're trying to soft pedal the charges. I guess they're going to try to give the guy bail here today or so. So, they don't care. I mean, they don't care if Trump makes it to the finish line or not.
Yeah, I mean, so
you got to face the facts on that. Democrats don't care if their opponent lives to tell the election.
I mean, he did get calls from Biden and from Harris on this, which is the proper thing to do, and everything. But does this give him a little more energy for the campaign a little bit? Like, I'm a target kind of thing like this. I mean, I don't know that it influences election at this point, but
right. Sadly, it's a like the first one was what, a 2-day news cycle. I remember reading like 4 days later, like the next Thursday or whatever. It's like, y'all remember like last weekend they tried to kill Trump. No one's talking about it anymore. It's like it disappeared. I'm like, yeah, it disappeared. Yeah, and this one will too. And this one their response was, yeah, that's right. The response was, well, he didn't actually squeeze off a shot, right? And he never really actually had Trump in his sights. Well, they caught the guy because they saw the gun barrel sticking out of the woods. So he did have something in his sights, or he wouldn't have been sticking his gun barrel out of the woods. Okay, so I mean, I don't know. And apparently, what they're saying is, a guy caught him, a Secret Service guy who was walking a hole ahead to look, to check stuff out. So,
so I mean, the barrel of a gun like that poking out of the bushes, it's like he's taking aim at something or someone. Is like,
right. He's not just sticking it out there. I'm gonna point it for a while.
Yeah,
that's not how it works.
What does he want to do? He wants to shoot golf balls or something. Come
right.
On, give me a break. Yeah, it's the Secret Service is. I mean, they've got a lot of questions to answer for and everything like that. The I mean, the last director, lost her job because of how things got botched. They've got an acting director in there now, so the agency's under a lot of turmoil.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, right.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
right. He was
at
ready for
first it was
battle.
like, he's wearing tiles? I was like
Yeah. I
it's
knew what that was going on there immediately.
yeah, it's like, I don't know, it's like, if a high-powered rifle hits the tile, isn't that the thing just gonna shatter?
Well, I mean, it might not be hit by a high profile. I mean, and you
Yeah,
may not be hit at a close distance, and there's all kind of things.
yeah. So, anyway, yeah, I mean, he was kind of, as I would say, loaded for bear, and he had a goal in mind that he was luckily not able to achieve, and, yeah, his history is just, he's not a sane person, and he's not a MAGA person, at
Right.
all.
He had a Kamala sticker on his truck, and he's an
Yeah.
Act Blue donor, and oh, but he's a Republican. No, he's not a Republican. Nice try.
Yeah, I mean, this is where the Democrats definitely want to run away from this guy. I mean, it's like they can't really point to anything that ties him recently to the Republican Party, and everything. So that it makes it harder for them to say. It's like, it looks like some liberal loon tried to take him out, and so that's not the image they want to do here with the last 40. Now we're at what, 47 days or whatever to go. So this is not a great look for them. What's your opinion about Trump running around or having Laura Loomer be with him? I-
What difference does it make?
well, I mean, I, I don't know. I mean, I think she's nuts. So it's like, I don't understand. I don't under, this is once again where I don't understand Trump sometimes, because he associates himself with people that he'd be better off keeping at a distance.
Well, say that, but okay. Of the 2020 and 2016 Trump coalitions, which part of those coalitions is the least enthused about voting for him now? Right? It's those people, the people who view it as a good thing that Laura Loomer is hanging out with Trump. The people who voted for DeSantis and he lost, and they're now bitter about that. The people that is, I can't put up with the chaos anymore and all that. And Trump's abandoning us on IVF and abortion and this and that and the other. Like, he's not being hardcore enough for us anymore, right? Those people are a little bit disillusioned. They are medium at best propensity voters. So if you give them an excuse to sit home, they will, and they're important to the coalition. And so I think he's just showing them a card.
Yeah, I mean, I
don't think he's letting her rewrite any policy manuals.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. But yeah, I mean, if you're trying to reignite that part of the base, I understand that. From a standpoint of optics, it just is like, it's another thing that the other side can tick off, and because
Well, they're going to tick off whatever, right?
Yeah,
It's like
yeah, she's a nutcase. So, but then again, right and left, we also have, both sides have a lot of nutcases.
Right. We both have a lot of nutcases, and sometimes her nuttiness makes her incorrect, but sometimes it's her. She's right down on the correct thing, and she is arguing the case harder than anyone else, and that's what people get uncomfortable with.
Yeah. So it's one of the, and this
I mean,
is
think about how many times you've looked at what she said and you go, I agree with the point she's making, but I don't like the way she's making it, right? I mean, that's the general, thing with Laura Loomer, right? It's like she's on the right side of most of the issues. right?
Yeah.
Every once in a while, she's a total clunker. That's not the thing. The thing is, she's a little meaner with her language and so forth, right? She offends people that you don't necessarily have to offend.
Yeah. And, I mean, once again, I mean, we are a free country. She has taken advantage of social media to create a name for herself and a platform and everything like that, which is all well and fine because everybody does it on all sides of, on all parts of this political
The
spectrum.
left has an army of people who have done this in coordination with the party and the candidates, which you're not really supposed to do, but they have an army of Harry Sissons and Brooklyn Dad Defiance and all these clowns who just come on and say their stuff every day, all day long.
Yeah. So we also have Harris trying to she's appearing with the media in controlled circumstances. This is very Joe Biden-esque, right? Is to keep her within a frame so that she doesn't get thrown off base and everything like this. But like the interview in Philadelphia, I don't know. I don't understand. I don't understand. I mean, he's like this. This is a major failing, of the campaign. I mean,
right? NABJ one yesterday was just as bad.
Yeah,
it's like it's complete word salad. They're exposing that she can't even handle friendly interviews. Unwittingly, they don't mean to do it. But certainly, the guy in Philly was as adoring as he could possibly be. NABJ people weren't much better, But like she does not answer their questions. She does not. What are you going to do to help the economy? It's tough out there. That's not the question. So we know it's tough. That's why we're asking you. What are you going to do? Right. And she doesn't really have anything to say.
Yeah. I mean, the answer to the kind of the economy thing was just like, well, grew up with a single family, single parent, mom, and community. She was finally able to buy her first home. People like that. They have these great lawn. They want proud of their great lawns. And I'm like, and the answer to the question is what?
Right. and look, and I'm going to tell you something. That could cost her more than anything. Could cost her the election because the people on her side notice that. The people on her side are like, yeah, she never is really answering the questions. They're not hammering on her like they would Trump, but they are noticing that like their part. I've said all along, like CNN, MSDNC, all these guys, they expect their ring to be kissed too, right? You cannot go by, walk the hall down to the president's office without stopping by and paying them their due respects for getting you there, right? They resent her for skipping them. She doesn't talk to them. She doesn't go on any shows. She doesn't put her vice president on shows, right? They're trying to do this, run out the clock without answering any serious questions. And the people whose job it is to ask the questions, are not happy about it. Like you'll hear it from even like Jim Acosta occasionally, where they're just like, we're not allowing, they're not answering questions. They're not being accountable. We don't know what they mean by half the stuff they say.
Yeah. I mean, here we have a president, who, in press interviews, and all these kinds of things, would often get lost, right? He'd lose his train of thought. He wasn't sure what he was doing. He wasn't sure where he was supposed to be on the stage and all these things. So, we talk a lot about his mental decline, some confusion, just kind of things like this. Harris is a whole different animal. I mean, she can't put a good thought together to answer a question at all. I mean, I don't know how, I think your point is well taken. I mean, what is her side, going to do, in essence, because they watch her continually, fumble, on these issues. It's like, you're not giving any answers. You're not telling people what you're going to do. You go off on this word salad or whatever, and that's it. And because they're friendly interviews, they just move on to the next question. And
Right.
The rest of us are sitting here going like, what was that?
Right.
Yeah, right. So it's like I was saying, right?
That's right.
Of course it is. Yeah. It's It's all about
John, by the way, John, like you, had a birthday this week. Happy birthday, John, and you. So you're back to being what, 3 years older than me now, right?
something like, yeah, 65. So
Yeah. So for a month or so now, you're 3 years older.
I guess that's official senior status. I assume John is younger.
Yeah, he's a little baby. He's like barely 60.
Let me say that turning, when as I was approaching turning 65, and you will learn this too as you get closer, is just that navigating all the oh, there we go.
61. Look at there.
We want to be accurate on the program here.
No matter how much it hurts.
Just navigating things, because I think I mentioned this before. You have your own. You usually have some kind of insurance before, and then you must. You basically have to get Medicare A and B. Otherwise you're going to pay a penalty, and
right.
And so that provides a certain amount of coverage, but you're also going to have to, really the best thing to do is to buy a Medigap policy, another secondary policy to cover what Medicare doesn't cover, or try to cover that gap.
Right.
And then you probably should get a prescription drug policy to cover the prescription drugs, because Medicare generally won't cover most of those. And so you got to do that. And so it becomes all of a sudden, where your insurance before, your private health insurance, had things mostly covered, you were doing well. Next thing you know, because of the change in insurance, all of a sudden everything says, oh, by the way, you might owe this money. I got a good, I don't know really about what to say about prescription drug prices, but I hadn't updated. I thought I had updated it through one part of CVS, but I guess one division doesn't talk to the other division. So luckily, I was able to do this on my app, on my phone. I was able to basically give them the information on my phone, and then within hours they did it. But so I've got a cholesterol medication, right? Fairly standard cholesterol medication, and because the insurance information was not in there, the new one, they wanted $270 versus zero. Once the insurance information went in there, the new insurance was basically covering it. So it was back to zero. And I'm like, wow. I mean, I know there are other programs out there, but, it's an interesting look at what happens when you have insurance and when you don't have insurance, as to kind of what the list prices are of things, out there. No, though I know full well that, no one really pays a list price. It's kind of like college tuition. I think I was listening to something, or reading something, listening or something the other day about college tuition. They're talking about how I must have been on Bloomberg or something like that, about college tuition, and they have all these scholarships and things like this. It's like, all you're doing, and this person was, I think, a dean at Villanova. It's like, you're just telling me just what a game higher education is that you have these artificially high prices for your education, for your tuition, and then you throw people all these discounts, these scholarships to bring it down, but it's all fake. It's like, give us the real price of the cost of education, instead of this. But this is also tied into student loan programs and all these other nonsensical things that creates this whole thing. Like, that's why it's like, I don't think in my lifetime that problem, that issue, that thing that just really ticks me off will ever really be solved, because I think they're just going to keep going at it, unless Donald Trump gets elected and he decides that this becomes one of his signature issues, is to get some honesty in there and say, look, you've got, you got to get rid of all this garbage, and let's get to the real price of this. Figure out, I'm a businessman, what are your input costs, and everything like this, and what should you have as a little cushion for margin, and that's what you should charge for your education, and not a penny.
It's distorted because government's paying for it.
Right. That's
right.
The thing.
That's a big part of why it's higher, is because, like, I'll give you an example. You're talking about the prescription drugs, the Part D, right? So when they did Part D, it's private insurance. It's basically just the good part of Obamacare. It's basically just a thing that sets you up a exchange, right? Sets you up with pharmacy benefit managers to handle your prescription stuff, right? When they were negotiating the legislation as part of the Medicare Modernization Act of 2005, you may remember that Tom DeLay held open the vote till like 4 a.m. to get this over the finish line. I remember coming back from Philly that night. I got up to a Phillies game, and I'm coming back, and I'm like, the light's on in the Capitol. I'm like, did they finally forget and go home and forget to turn it off? Like they can't still be over there, right? And they were not even close to finished, right? There was I came by at like 2 a.m, and it was like 4:30 before they finished voting. So when they were negotiating that, Henry Waxman was on House Energy and Commerce Committee. He said they should make set the premium at $41 a month. Because if they didn't, once it started, the premiums would go way high. No one would be able to afford it. So the market's open. Premiums started at 19. They're still about 32 or 33 on average. So it's still not 41, right? His idea would still have cost Americans millions and millions of dollars, right? Because he wanted it government controlled. He didn't want to let the markets work. The service was delivered much cheaper and more efficiently. And Part D is spent about a third less money than it was budgeted over the course of the program.
Yeah, I'll say so. So Medicare, the Medicare premium right now for the average person is $174 and change a month, and they're estimating it'll go up to $185 next year. And if your income is even higher, it'll cost you more. My prescription drug plan is 40 cents a month. Okay, that's the premium. And then if there are any copays for certain drugs, then I pay it. But so it's a minimal cost on that. I know I'm paying more now because I was under Obamacare up through the end of August. When I do that and I have my Medigap policy and everything like that, Medicare, Medigap, and this, but it's still pretty cheap insurance overall versus when I was fully working. The premiums, that whether or not it was a Kaiser plan or a Blue Cross plan or anything like this, the actual premiums, for me would have been what, $1,500 a month to cover a lot of the same stuff. And I'm basically going to spend $300 a month or whatever it is. So, it's, medical coverage has become much more affordable. Now, I don't know, exactly what happens with out of pocket exactly. I guess the Medicare's got a $3,500 cap for annual for this year and $2,000 for next year. So, all those seniors running around, if they get a lot of expensive medical care, we're all paying for it.
Right. That's right.
Right. So that's a whole nother issue that the government's got, with Social Security.
Right. That's one of those. That's the other one I keep waiting on to kind of take track is, Kennedy is going around. He's making all these appearances for Trump, right? And he keeps talking about. He said yesterday that one of the things that Trump has told him is that he is going to have Kennedy lead a commission on reducing child obesity, making the food better, getting people on to eating better food and so forth. And try and reduce chronic diseases. And I think that's actually the name of the commission is going to have something to do with reducing chronic disease in children and adults. So, other side is not even thinking about that. They're thinking about, tax credits for childcare, which we can't really afford and shouldn't, and stuff like that, right? There's very pedestrian, traditional Democrat giveaway items. Whereas we're looking at, that's a game changer if you make a big cut into the amount of kids who are overweight, make the amount of adults who are overweight, fix the dietary habits of the country. I mean, that's a game changer for centuries. So we would be benefiting from that, right? So they're talking about some big policy here.
So I think it's interesting that Jason Furman, who was the chairman of the White House Council of Economic Advisors from 2013 to 2017. He's got a piece in the Wall Street Journal that's basically like neither Trump or Harris, their economic plans are very good, but Harris is a safer bet.
Of course, safer
And
bet for what it is,
yeah, and I'm like, yeah, I don't know. It's like,
she's talking about fixing grocery prices, right? To stop price gouging in an industry with a 2% profit margin. I mean, that's nuts. How's that going to work?
Yeah, I mean, look, you've got that whole Kroger Albertsons, just like a $20 billion grocery merger, and they're trying to, the government's trying to stop this. But you have the chairman of Kroger saying that the efficiencies that we would get by combining forces is that we're committing to lowering grocery prices by $1 billion across the board. Because the agreement, the argument from the liberals, from the Elizabeth Warrens of the world, is that this kind of thing, reduces competition and pushes prices up for everybody. But grocery stores, because they operate on some thin margins, if they can gain more scale, they can put more pressure on the suppliers.
That's what Walmart does. That's how Walmart holds prices down. They have scale and they put pressure on the suppliers.
That's how a lot of these things have gone. I mean, that's why we have, not just the Walmart, but the Best Buys or the Amazons. They're able to bring us in general lower prices of all kinds of goods because they have scale. They're able to do that. And I can. The liberals' attitude with everything, it's the same thing with airline mergers or any kind of combination, is that, fewer of these guys is not better, it's worse. But, when it's deregulated and you're allowed to do these kinds of things, you get a lot of airlines that pop up and are trying to find the niches and say, I'm going to bring you a lower cost service. And then you try to beat me on this and all that, and what is the effect usually of when these mergers can't occur? Layoffs occur.
Right.
Things like that. They look at it and they say, well, we're not going to be able to operate the way we want to operate. So we're going to just wind up laying off people, reducing the number of jobs out there. That is not, that's not what they, most of them had promised to really leave most jobs alone. So, but beforehand, but if they can't have the merger, they wind up laying off people. So the liberals wind up getting not what the short end here. They kind of continue to mess this whole thing up overall.
Right. And she's also talking about corporate tax increase on high earners. How are they going to react to these higher taxes? Are they going to do it? Are they going to lower prices? I don't think so. I think that'll be about the last thing on their list, right?
Yeah, and we know that
them more to live. They're not going to. Companies are not going to say, okay, if you raise the corporate tax 8%, right, we'll just make 8% less money. We're good. That's not how it's going to work. Either the prices are going to go up or the costs / employees are going to go down.
Right. And government price controls on goods, that'll just create a shortage.
It's a disaster. Yeah, a disaster.
That will not work. I do want to say one more thing, though, about Kamala in her interview. The clip about her answering the question on guns was hilarious because she's trying to talk about guns and the loophole at gun shows. And then she says, I protested at a gun show 10 years ago.
I've done this. So I haven't been to the border. I haven't been to Europe either.
Answer the question, maybe. I don't know. And everything. So, quickly before we get to the end here, which we're fast approaching. So, polls are still relatively tight. I did see the CNN report by Harry Enton, that Harris is in the danger zone, that if Harris wins the general election by 1 or 2%, there's only a 23% chance she wins the electoral college. Right. She goes to 3 or 4%, she's got a 53% chance, and then she goes higher than that, she's got an 81% chance. So it's really tight, and he seems to be somewhat pessimistic And then I found this site called Election Betting Odds, which has Harris kind of just, easily winning the general election, but losing electoral, I think 281 to 257 because of the map. So, we have a lot of different things. Polymarket's has reversed. Now it's Harris up 51-48.
In the popular.
Yeah, in the popular.
He's ahead in the electoral on Polymarket.
So it's interesting. So I think I guess the chances are is that we still may stand that chance of Harris squeaking by in popular, but losing a fair amount on the electoral side, and the electoral side is what counts in the end.
Well, right, and Larry Sabato had a piece out yesterday that said that Harris is going to win California and New York and Washington State, but her margins there are down. They're down about 5 to 10%, depending on where it is in those places. In the rock hard left places, she's not winning by as big of margins as she had before, and she's obviously in trouble in Pennsylvania. That Scott Pressler is doing a job. He's about to flip Luzerne County from blue to red, which it hasn't been red. I don't think it's ever been red. He's already flipped Lackawanna County, where Joe Biden is from, and he's close to flipping Montgomery County, which surrounds Pittsburgh, Philadelphia. So they made some real inroads in eastern Pennsylvania, on the eastern side of the state, which is where Trump got crushed last time. You take a map of Pennsylvania, you draw a line down about a third of that. One side is mostly Democrats. The other side is overwhelmingly Republican, except for the inner city core city of Pittsburgh. The whole rest of Western Pennsylvania is hardcore Republican. So she and I think somebody asked her the other day how she felt about Pennsylvania, and the look on her face was like, we're trying, we'll see what happens, we're hopeful, but she knows she's in trouble there, and it looks like Georgia and Arizona are slipping away from them, so they can't lose Pennsylvania.
Yeah, and that Philadelphia interview is supposed to be something that has helped her in Pennsylvania, but it was just a disaster. So it didn't do anything for her at all. I mean,
notice she's kept Joe's HQ in Wilmington. She's running it out of Wilmington because it's close to Pennsylvania. You can get into Philly, in 15 minutes or whatever.
All right, I think let's go ahead and wrap it up. Take us out, Brian.
Let me look at what else we had on here. You're right that both of them are some pretty ghastly spending or tax break proposals being thrown around to win the presidency. That's a good point. You say Gallup has Harris at 25 underwater with independents. I saw somebody else had 19. There is no way she wins if she's really 19 underwater on independents. Their bases are locked down at basically the same rate, right? It's going to be about the independents. Let's see. Yeah, 406,000 people visited the vote.gov website. Probably about 300,000 of them were told they were too young to register. Let's see. The interest on the national debt tops $1 trillion. We are now at the point where Biden has added more to the national debt than Trump. I don't understand why the media cannot get that fact out, at least conservative media. But it's now true that Biden has added more than Trump. And I think Trudeau is going to keep losing until he's completely out of power.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Hope you enjoyed it. As always, stay safe and stay well. Remember, we live in the greatest country in the world. Do not let them tell you otherwise. And God bless America. We'll be off next week. I'm going to be taking a family trip. We need to, unfortunately, make a visit to Arizona to visit my son's grave on the first anniversary of his passing. So we'll be out of town, and then we'll be back the following week on hopefully a happier note. All right. Thanks a lot, everybody.